In the 1990s, Ukraine was a nation in chaos. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. The streets were filled with fear, poverty, and uncertainty. And in the middle of that storm, a man appeared. Quiet, ordinary, unnoticed. His name was Anatoly Onoprienko. And for 7 long years he would become one of the most feared figures in Eastern Europe. They called him the Ukrainian Terminator. But the truth is far stranger and far more human than that nickname suggests. Anatoly Onoprienko was born in 1959 in a small Ukrainian village called Lasky. He was the younger of 2 sons. When he was 4 years old, his mother died. Soon after, his father sent him to an orphanage. For many, that would be a painful chapter. For him, it was the beginning of a lifetime of isolation. Teachers described him as quiet, intelligent, but emotionally cold. He didn't make friends. He didn't trust adults. And as he grew older, that loneliness turned into something darker. Resentment. By the time he left the orphanage, he had already learned one rule. The world doesn't care about you. So why should you care about the world? The 1990s in Ukraine were brutal. The Soviet system had collapsed overnight. Police forces were underfunded, communication was poor, and people were desperate just to survive. That kind of environment creates opportunity for good people to disappear and for bad people to move unnoticed. Onoprienko began drifting across the country. He had no stable job, no family, no direction. But what he did have was anger. He once told investigators that he heard a voice, a command that told him who to target and when. He said he felt chosen. Between 1989 and 1996, entire families vanished across central and western Ukraine. Always at night. Always far from cities. No clear motive. No clear pattern. For years, police struggled to make sense of what was happening. There was no national database, no coordination between regions. Each local department thought they were dealing with isolated crimes. But when the number of victims started to rise, someone finally noticed the pattern. Investigators called it the Trail of Fear, and all leads pointed west. In 1996, one abandoned car found near Zhytomyr changed everything. Inside were weapons, documents, and items connected to several crime scenes. Fingerprints led police to one name, Anatoly Onoprienko. When they arrived at his home, he didn't resist. He simply said, "I've been waiting." During interrogations, Onoprienko showed no emotion. He spoke calmly, methodically. He described events like he was talking about the weather. Psychologists later called him a textbook example of antisocial personality disorder. Someone shaped by early abandonment, emotional trauma, and total detachment from empathy. But what made him truly terrifying wasn't his actions, it was his logic. He said, "If I hadn't done it, someone else would have." The world needs cleansing. Experts debated whether he truly believed this, or whether it was a way to justify the emptiness inside him. In 1999, Anatoly Onoprienko stood trial in Zhytomyr. The case was one of the most publicized in Ukraine's history. Journalists flooded the courtroom. The public wanted answers and revenge. He showed no remorse, no apology, no explanation beyond destiny. The court sentenced him to death. But when Ukraine abolished the death penalty in 2000, his sentence was changed to life imprisonment. He spent the rest of his life in a maximum security prison. He refused interviews for years. When he finally spoke again, it was brief. He said, "I have peace now. I fulfilled my purpose." Anatoly Onoprienko died in prison in 2013 from heart failure. No family attended his burial. No grave marker bears his name. But his story didn't end there. For criminologists, his case became a study in what happens when a society collapses faster than its systems can adapt. For psychologists, he became an example of how early trauma and isolation can shape a human being into something unrecognizable. And for ordinary Ukrainians, his name became a reminder of a time when darkness felt closer than ever. When people hear about Anatoly Onoprienko, they often ask, how can someone become like that? But maybe the real question is, what happens to a child when the world stops caring for him? Because monsters like Onoprienko don't just appear out of nowhere. They're built, piece by piece, in silence. And often, we don't notice until it's too late.